do you think? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Doc and Queenie Bible Trivia. Good evening, Queenie.
Good evening, Doc. The slower you talk, the more thinking I think you are doing, so that's good.
I have to remember who you were.
I know, see? It's okay. I'm not sensitive about that. It's good.
Well, what's new in your neck of the woods?
Well, I always find it interesting, hello algorithm, that my Twitter feed is filled with Bible verses all the time. And obviously, the more you do Bible verses, the more Bible verses pop up. I get that, but it's just so incredible. All things happen in God's perfect timing. And then I have another feed that says someone is being sent to you, who will be a perfect answer to prayer. Every Christian can be a bearer of good news in a world that so desperately needs it. The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of God stands forever. Hello. And it's so incredible. And then this is one of my favorites. This is Paula White Kane, for those of you who have a Twitter feed. Stop worrying about how it will work out. God has you. And when I see all of these things, and again, Twitter, people don't use Twitter for Bible verses necessarily. And that's what is all over my feed. And I just find it amazing. Stop worrying about how it will all work out. God does not usually call me and say, Catherine, can you help me? And so it's just incredible to me when I see. I know. I knew that would surprise you, but it's just incredible to me that we still are fretting about stuff, and he's got it. He's got it.
Right.
We don't even have to go. It's just incredible. But of course, on my Twitter feed, I need reassurance apparently, because that's what my Twitter feed is filled with tonight. So yeah, you never know, I guess, right?
Yes, that's pretty cool. And what I've had in I don't do the Twitter thing, but I have been doing some YouTube stuff, and one of my favorite group of preachers, the Hagee family from San Antonio, Texas, listened to a sermon by Matt Hagee the other night, and the first thing he said was, "If we are not obedient, God will not bless us." It's kind of like you make a choice and there's a consequence. So if we choose to try and do things ourselves and, well, make that choice and it's not in the plan or it's not meant to happen, there's a consequence for that. The obedience part, he really drove that home. And of course, how do we know how to be obedient? Well, we have to be in the Word. We have to continually be studying the Word and praying and asking, for discernment. The Holy Spirit can help us discern. I think God puts, like that one said, he puts the right people in your path.
Yep.
Not all people are meant to be in your path for your entire lifetime. I'm learning that the older I get. People come in and come out of your life. They're there for a reason. Sometimes you can't. Yeah. Yeah.
I have witnessed that before, actually myself. It feels like a season.
Yes. And I think, it's season, and it's also wherever God has us, because some of the people that are in our lives right now, you think about like 10, 15 years ago, would they have been a good fit? Would they have been your friend or in your life 10 or 15 years ago? Maybe not. Maybe you weren't ready for them. God didn't have you ready for them or the situation or whatever. It's, I got my hair cut today. I don't know if you noticed.
Super cute.
But yeah, thank you. It's nice and cool, and that's why I did it, because it can always grow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, I used to have short hair, and I'm kind of liking going back to the short hair, because especially when it's 90 bazillion degrees outside, but it only feels like 105.
Well, see, then we have nothing to complain about. That's for sure.
Yes. So my hairstylist is a believer, and we were talking. I don't remember what we were talking about, but she basically goes, all things work for the good. And we basically were talking to each other about all things work for the, are good. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. God did not give us a spirit of fear. That kind of covers a gamut of everything. All we're supposed to do is show up and keep moving one step ahead of the other. Right? Did I not? I don't know if I missed anything on that. And we were, sorry, go ahead.
Since you mentioned pastors Hagee, interesting, ironic, random. All of a sudden, the next thing I look down on my Twitter feed, Pastor John Hagee, if you don't believe Genesis 1:1, you have no solid foundation to believe the rest of Scripture.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? And
Right.
It's just, I mean, when they state it like that, it's just like, what? And yeah, and you just, it's just phenomenal to me. All we ever need is out there. We just have to be open to it. We just have to be open to it.
Yeah, and we know, not you and I are not professional Bible.
Anything,
We're not theologians. God just, he requires us to be in his word. I mean, that's where he's telling us everything. How can you know what God wants or how God is? Of course, I always say we always get a little sliver because we really, truly don't understand. We can understand how much he loves us, but hairstylist and I were talking today with he didn't have to send Jesus. He could have just smited and blew up the whole earth, what had happened up to the point of before Jesus came. And now after that, Jesus has come. I mean, he's opened it up even further because he reconnected with us and we have authority through Christ. And people, in my opinion, as followers, don't understand what kind of authority they have. And I was voicing that I'm frustrated with people. Well, I shouldn't be frustrated with people, but it's just everybody keeps looking back and recycling what happened to them or being a victim or a this or a that. It's like, where does that experience, where can you use that moving forward to help somebody else? Why do you have to wallow in it? Because as we all know, as believers, the time is short. It's getting shorter and shorter by the day. And how many of us have realized, like, wow, has time been flying? It seems to be speeding up that much faster. Because at the end of everything, and I'm not doing this. I mean, I'm saying this for myself just as well. We have to have an account for everything we think and everything we've done or haven't done. And that's where there's a reward piece. He will reward us for doing being obedient and doing what he wants us to do. We will lose rewards. We will lose crowns for dropping the ball for whatever reason, I mean.
Isn't it amazing when people experience something? Some people take that experience and not only learn from it, but definitely grow from it. And other people take that experience and wallow in self-pity in it.
Yep.
And
it's very interesting.
He would not have let us go through it if he didn't anticipate growth, I would imagine, because I don't feel he likes us to wallow.
No, not at all. And then, and here's a hard reality with the way the world is. Nobody cares. They don't care about you. They care about themselves, but they don't care about you or your story. Really, when it comes down to it, other than your family and your close friends, nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about your story. And that's a harsh reality. It almost hurts to say that because you want to care about what people went through, but how many times do you beat a dead horse? What is the point?
The only time I can see that someone cares about your story is if their story is upper. And all of a sudden they'll listen to yours because theirs is worse. And or theirs is bigger, or theirs is similar, or theirs is something. But the only time they go, oh yeah, me too. Oh yeah, me too. Oh my gosh, same for me. And as soon as that happens, then they've got a common denominator, a common ground, if you will, but theirs was worse. And so, yeah, I have seen that before too. But as I said, I don't think he lets us go through stuff if we're not going to grow from it and come out better on the other side.
Yes. And, that doesn't mean that I don't care about what somebody experienced or went through, but it's, like you just said, what is God's purpose? Maybe that's the way that a believer should be praying is, what is my purpose in going through this? And how can I help others with what I know and what I experienced?
Okay. How long have we been on this call?
11 minutes and 2 seconds.
Correct. And in that amount of time, I just pushed my Twitter feed refresh. Guess what Lisa Turkhurst has to say?
Uh-oh.
Right. Too much revelation, and we pridefully run ahead of God. Too little, and we'd be paralyzed with fear. So thankful he sheds just enough light to see the very next step.
Wow. Wow.
Now, do you think my Twitter feed can hear us?
Yes.
Right. Testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. And you see what I mean? Isn't that phenomenal? 11 minutes we've been on this call. Lisa Turkhurst is listening. Pastor Hagee is listening. Paula White Kane is listening. All of our favorites are on this Twitter feed, feeding us back what we need to hear in order to be compassionate towards other people. Hello.
Yep. We as believers, we are saved through faith. God, Jesus nailed it all to the cross. There is freedom in that. And why not take your freedom? And I did a little Tuesday tips with Dr. Laura on Fun, Fearless Female Global Community of Christian Women. That's a lot to say with Delinda Lane.
That again. Yes, say that real fast.
Real fast. And I flipped the, what do you do with possibilities? You can help others reach their possibilities. It's a pay it forward. It's a give forward. It's a give back. All of those types of phrases. It's a success is standing up after, and I don't like the word failure. How about standing up after a bump? Step back and go, what did I learn from that? And then move forward. Because who knows us better than we know ourselves? God does, because he created us. Psalm 139, I knew you before you were formed, in your mother's womb. That's the hope. And that's the hope that the world's missing because they're, stirring fear or whatever else is going on, which is sad because there's so much freedom in knowing who you are in Jesus. So I guess I'm on my pedestal. I'll get off now.
Isn't it amazing, honestly, when so many preacher believer people say, turn off your television. Televisions are still hottest ticket items for sale.
Yep.
Isn't that phenomenal? How many preachers, believers, pastors say, just turn it off. You don't need to hear it. It's going to mess you up. It's going to cloud your brain. Just turn it off. Yet television sales are still hot ticket items.
Yep. Because we've been kind of brainwashed to get all of our information from a resource that's clearly lying and stirring the pot of fear. Even the weather. Oh, we're going to have tornadoes tonight. Oh, great. 3:00 in the morning. Oh, even better. Yeah. Click.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Information is one thing, but fear mongering is another.
Yep. So Doc and Queenie have spoken.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure everybody's like, I hope they're done now. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Now, Dr. Laura, according to my notes, and never trust me, we are on, if we stay in order of what we have been working on the last couple weeks, we start tonight with Genesis chapter 38. Is that okay with you?
I think so. How about while I find that, would you like to welcome everybody, and I'll look for Genesis 38.
I think it's in the Old Testament.
Is it? Okay.
You have done the disclaimer several times that we're not Bible scholars, so I thought I'd give everybody a heads up. Thank you all for joining us tonight on Doc and Queenie Bible Trivia. Whether you're live with us now or on the replay, we are certainly happy to have you here. And we will be starting tonight on Genesis chapter 38. Ready, Doc?
Ready, Queenie.
Did you find it in the Old Testament?
I found it in the Old Testament. Oops.
Well, by golly, that's where we left it, so that's pretty good. Judah married the daughter of a Canaanite, an Egyptian, an Israelite, or a Midianite. Judah married the daughter of a Canaanite, an Egyptian, an Israelite, a Midianite.
Okay, I do believe that is Genesis 38, verse 1, though it doesn't really say that he married her.
2.
Oh, it's 2.
Uh-huh.
It still doesn't say that, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't say that. Genesis 38, verse 2. There, Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He took her and went in to her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Er. I think that's how you pronounce
What
it.
was the name of Judah's first son? Shua, Onan, Shelah. What was the name of Judah's first son? Shua, Onan, or Shelah?
Genesis 38, verse 2. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name
Who married Tamar when died? Onan, Shua, Shelah, Judah. Who married Tamar when died? Onan, Shua, Shelah, Judah.
What verse are we on, Queenie? I've already lost it.
Oh, that's okay.
I think they jumped ahead.
8.
Oh, I jumped way ahead. Okay. Genesis 38, verse 8. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother."
What happened to him? He prospered. He became king. He was called to war. He died. What happened to him? He prospered. He became king. He was called to war, or he died.
Are we on verse 9?
10, actually.
10. Genesis 38, verse 10. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also.
Who did Judah promise Tamar would marry her? He would. Aaron, Shelah, Levi. Who did Judah promise Tamar would marry her? He would. Aaron, Shelah, or Levi.
Genesis 38, verse 11. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah, my son, grows up."
How was Tamar dressed? As a harlot, as a beggar, as a queen, in white linen. How was Tamar dressed? As a harlot, as a beggar, as a queen, in white linen.
I love this version.
It's 15.
Genesis 30:15. Okay. Genesis 38, verse 15. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face.
Which in this version is harlot.
Okay.
What did Judah say he would give her? A crown, gold, silver, a kid. What did Judah say he would give her? A crown, gold, silver, a kid.
Genesis 38, verse 17. He answered, I will send you a young goat, meaning the kid, from the flock.
When Tamar was found to be with child, what was Judah going to do to her? Put her away privately, have her burnt, cast her from the land, report her to the priests. When Tamar was found to be with child, what was Judah going to do to her? Put her away privately, have her burnt, cast her from the land, report her to the priests.
Genesis 38, verse 24. And about 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter in law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. And Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned.
When Tamar showed Judah the items she had, what did he say? Take them from her. She is a harlot. These things are stolen. She is more righteous than I. When Tamar showed Judah the items she had, what did he say? Take them from her. She is a harlot. These things are stolen. She is more righteous than I.
Genesis 38, verse 26. Then Judah identified them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again.
What did the midwife put on the baby's hand? Anointing oil, myrrh, ashes, a scarlet thread. What did the midwife put on the baby's hand? Anointing oil, myrrh, ashes, a scarlet thread.
Genesis 38, verse 28. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, this one came out first.
This is the end of chapter 38, Doc.
Well, this one's going to be interesting because there's a lot of interesting things going on. Wowza.
Lot of dynamic.
Lots of dynamic, yes, for sure. Genesis 38 in the Contemporary English Version. About that time, Judah left his brothers in the hill country and went to live near his friend Hira in the town of Adullam. While there, he met the daughter of Shua, a Canaanite man. Judah married her, and they had 3 sons. He named the first one She named the next one Onan, and the third one was born when Judah was in Chezib, and she named him Shelah. Later, Judah chose Tamar as a wife for his oldest son. But was very evil, and the Lord took his life. So Judah took Onan. It's your duty to marry Tamar and have a child for your brother. Onan knew the child would not be his, and when he had sex with Tamar, he made sure that she would not get pregnant. The Lord wasn't pleased with Onan and took his life too. Judah did not want the same thing to happen to his son Shelah, and he told Tamar, go home to your father and live there as a widow until my son Shelah is grown. So Tamar went to live with her father. Some years later, Judah's wife died, and he mourned for her. He then went with his friend Hira to the town of Timnah, where his sheep were being sheared. Tamar found out that her father-in-law Judah was going to Timnah to shear his sheep. She also realized that Shelah was now a grown man, but she had not been allowed to marry him. So she decided to dress in something other than her widow's clothes and to cover her face with a veil. After this, she sat outside the town of Eniam on the road to Timnah. Here we go again with words. Yeah. When Judah came along, he did not recognize her because of the veil. He thought she was a prostitute and asked her to sleep with him. She asked, "What will you give me if I do?" "One of my young goats," he answered. "What will you give me to keep until you send the goat?" she asked. "What do you want?" he asked in return. "The ring on that cord around your neck," was her reply. "I also want the special walking stick you have with you." He gave them to her. They slept together and she became pregnant. After returning home, Tamar took off the veil and dressed in her widow's clothes again. Judah asked his friend Hira, take a goat to the woman so he could get back the ring and the walking stick, but she wasn't there. Hira asked the people of Enem, "Where is the prostitute who sat along the road outside of your town?" "There's never been one here," they answered. Hira went back and told Judah, "I couldn't find the woman, and the people of Enem said no prostitute had ever been there." "If you couldn't find her, we'll just let her keep the things I gave her," Judah answered, "and we'd better forget about the goat or else we'll look like fools." About 3 months later, someone told Judah, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has behaved like a prostitute, and now she's pregnant." "Drag her out of town and burn her to death," Judah shouted. As Tamar was being dragged off, she sent someone to tell her father-in-law, "The man who gave me this ring, this cord, and this walking stick is the one who got me pregnant." "Those are mine," Judah admitted. "She's a better person than I am, because I broke my promise to let her marry my son Shelah." After this, Judah never slept with her again. Tamar later gave birth to twins, but before either of them was born, one of them stuck a hand out of her womb. The woman who was helping tied a red thread around the baby's hand and explained, "This one came out first." At once his hand went back in, and the other child was born first. The woman then said, "What an opening you've made for yourself." So they named the baby Perez. When the brother with the red thread was born, they named him Zerah. I just think about a hand coming out and then going back in. That's kind of scary. As if it was just like nothing, no pain, no gain, no.
Sometimes these visuals kind of get to my head.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's proceed quickly to chapter 39. Who purchased Joseph? Pontius Pilate, Potiphar, Cephar, or Silas? Who purchased Joseph? Pontius Pilate, Potiphar, Cephar, Silas.
Oh, forgot to change my version, but Genesis 39, verse 1. The Ishmaelites took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the king's official in charge of the palace guard.
He was a prophet, a priest, a bandit, an officer of Pharaoh. He was a prophet, a priest, a bandit, an officer of Pharaoh.
Genesis 39, verse 1 again, and I'm going to read it in a different version. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites, who brought him down there.
He made Joseph till his fields, serve in his army, oversee his house, serve Egyptian gods. He made Joseph till his fields, serve in his army, oversee his house, serve Egyptian gods.
Welcome, Debbie Miller. Genesis 39, verse 4. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had.
Who told Joseph, "Lie with me"? Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, his master's daughter, a servant girl. Who told Joseph, "Lie with me"? Potiphar, Potiphar's wife, his master's daughter, a servant girl.
Genesis 39, verse 7. And after time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me."
What did he answer? "I shall do as you say. Thou shalt be cursed with a curse. Shall sin not become known to my master? How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" What did he answer? "I shall do as you say. Thou shalt be cursed with a curse. Shall sin not become known to my master? How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
Genesis 39, verse 8. But he refused and said to his master's wife, Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge.
When Joseph fled, what did he leave behind? A water pitcher, a script, his garment, a bag of coins. When Joseph fled, what did he leave behind? A water pitcher, a script, his garment, a bag of coins.
Genesis 39, verse 12. She caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house.
What did Potiphar's wife tell him? Spare Joseph's life. Joseph is a thief. Joseph attempted to lie with her. Give Joseph charge of the household. What did Potiphar's wife tell him? Spare Joseph's life. Joseph is a thief. Joseph attempted to lie with her. Give Joseph charge of the household.
This looks like it's verse 14 and 15.
This one only says 14, but you can do as you wish.
14. Okay. Genesis 39, verse 14 and 15. She called to the men of her household and said to them, See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house.
What happened to Joseph? He was sold to Pharaoh. He was sent home. He was put in prison. He was cast into the desert. What happened to Joseph? He was sold to Pharaoh. He was sent home. He was put in prison. He was cast into the desert.
Genesis 39, verse 20. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison.
What happened to Joseph there? He was killed. He was attacked by bandits. He was robbed and beaten. He was put in charge. What happened to Joseph there? He was killed. He was attacked by bandits. He was robbed and beaten. He was put in charge.
Genesis 39, verse 22. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison.
All that Joseph did was reported to Potiphar, was reported to Pharaoh, was counted as folly. The Lord made it to prosper. All that Joseph did was reported to Potiphar, was reported to Pharaoh, was counted as folly. The Lord made it prosper.
Genesis 39, verse 23. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed.
That is the end of chapter 39, Doc.
Sounds good, Queenie. All right, Genesis 39 in the Contemporary English Version. Joseph and Potiphar's wife. The Ishmaelites took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the king's official in charge of the palace guard. So Joseph lived in the home of Potiphar, his Egyptian owner. Soon Potiphar realized that the Lord was helping Joseph to be successful in whatever he did. Potiphar liked Joseph and made him his personal assistant, putting him in charge of his house and all of his property. Because of Joseph, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's family and friends. Potiphar left everything up to Joseph, and with Joseph there, the only decision he had to make was what he wanted to eat. Joseph was well-built and handsome, and Potiphar's wife soon noticed him. She asked him to make love to her, but he refused and said, My master isn't worried about anything in his house because he has placed me in charge of everything he owns. No one in my master's house is more important than I am. The only thing he hasn't given me is you, and that's because you are his wife. I won't sin against God by doing such a terrible thing as this." She kept begging Joseph day after day, but he refused to do what she wanted or even to go near her. One day, Joseph went to Potiphar's house to do his work, and none of the other servants were there. Potiphar's wife grabbed hold of his coat and said, "Make love to me." Joseph ran out of the house, leaving his coat there in her hands. When this happened, she called in her servants and said, "Look, this Hebrew has come just to make fools of us. He tried to rape me, but I screamed for help. And when he heard me scream, he ran out of the house, leaving his coat with me." Potiphar's wife kept Joseph's coat until her husband came home. Then she said, "That Hebrew slave of yours tried to rape me. But when I screamed for help, he left his coat and ran out of the house." Potiphar became very angry and threw Joseph in the same prison where the king's prisoners were kept. While Joseph was in prison, the Lord helped him and was good to him. He even made the jailer like Joseph so much that he put him in charge of the other prisoners and of everything that was done in the jail. The jailer did not worry about anything because the Lord was with Joseph and made him successful in all that he did. And that kind of segues to what we were talking about earlier with God will bless us if we're obedient. Joseph was obedient not to sin, and God even gave him favor in jail and in slavery. And that's a great example of, focusing on God regardless of what's going on around you. Because I'm sure slavery and jail weren't fun.
And I am also sure that even though the situation felt bleak or looked bleak, we're not in charge of the outcome, regardless of what we think we see. And so I think that's incredibly awesome, actually. All right, now we are headed for Genesis chapter 40. Whose servants were the butler and baker? Judah, Joseph, Pharaoh, Israel. Whose servants were the butler and baker? Judah, Joseph, Pharaoh, Israel.
I'm guessing this is probably verse 1. Genesis 40, verse 1, sometime after this.
Actually, it's 2.
See, every time I guess, I miss.
Yes.
Genesis 40, verse 2. And Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. There we go.
There we go. Where were the butler and baker sent? To Israel, to serve in the palace, to rescue Joseph, into prison. Where were the butler and baker sent? To Israel, to serve in the palace, to rescue Joseph, into prison.
Genesis 40, verse 3. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison where Joseph was confined.
What did the butler dream about? A vine and 3 branches, 3 white baskets and flowers, a sea full of fish, Pharaoh's horses. What did the butler dream about? A vine and 3 branches, 3 white baskets and flowers, a sea full of fish, Pharaoh's horses.
Genesis 40, verse 9. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream, there was a vine before me."
What did Joseph say the butler's dream meant? He would be executed. He would be restored to his position. His family would be brought to him. No man would have pity on him. What did Joseph say the butler's dream meant? He would be executed. He would be restored to his position. His family would be brought to him. No man would have pity on him.
Genesis 40, verse 13. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer.
What did the baker dream about? A vine and 12 branches, 3 white baskets and birds, a sky full of stars, roses and kine. Rose and what is that word? Rose and kine. Huh. What did the baker dream about? A vine and 12 branches, 3 white baskets and birds, a sky full of stars, rose and kine. I got to find out what that is.
Genesis 40, verse 16, when the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head.
Baskets it is. Let's see what this means. Now, isn't that interesting? For the first time ever, a Google search does not give me the answer. ROES and KINE. Huh. Sometimes it even says it scripturally as far as what that should say. Isn't that amazing? We will have to do a deeper search on that particular question. ROES and KINE. What did Joseph say the baker's dream meant? He would be executed. He would be restored to his position. His family would be brought to him. No man would have pity on him. What did Joseph say the baker's dream meant? He would be executed. He would be restored to his position. His family would be brought to him. No man would have pity on him.
Genesis 40, verse 19. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you.
What happened to the butler? He was restored to his position. He was executed. He was united with his family. He lived to be a reproach among men. What happened to the butler? He was restored to his position. He was executed. He was united with his family. He lived to be a reproach among men.
Genesis 40, verse 20. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer. He restored the one. Sorry.
No. That's totally great.
Saying 21 says he restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand.
What happened to the baker? He was restored to his position. He was executed. He was united with his family. He lived to be a reproach among men. What happened to the baker? He was restored to his position. He was executed. He was united with his family. He lived to be a reproach among men.
Genesis 40, verse 22. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them.
3 days after the interpretations were given, it was the Sabbath, Passover, Pharaoh's birthday, or Hanukkah. 3 days after the interpretations were given, it was the Sabbath, Passover, Pharaoh's birthday, or Hanukkah.
Genesis 40, verse 20. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday.
The man who was restored forgot Joseph, told Pharaoh about Joseph, protected Joseph, loved Joseph. The man who was restored forgot Joseph, told Pharaoh about Joseph, protected Joseph, loved Joseph.
Genesis 40, verse 23. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
And that is the end of chapter 40.
And isn't that like man, to forget people when you're doing good stuff and having fun and all of that? But when it gets nasty and then you look for help? And then, yeah.
I think they call that human nature.
Yep. Genesis 40 in the contemporary English version. While Joseph was in prison, both the king's personal servant and his chief cook made the king angry. So he had them thrown into the same prison with Joseph. They spent a long time in prison, and the official in charge of the palace guard made Joseph their servant. One night, each of the two men had a dream, but their dreams had different meanings. The next morning, when Joseph went to see the men, he could tell they were upset, and he asked, "Why are you so worried today?" "We each had a dream last night," they answered, "and there is no one to tell us what they mean." Joseph replied, "Doesn't God know the meaning of your dreams? Now tell me what you dreamed." The king's personal servant told Joseph, "In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed and its grapes became ripe. I held the king's cup and squeezed the grapes into it. Then I gave the cup to the king." Joseph said, "This is the meaning of your dream. The 3 branches stand for 3 days, and in 3 days the king will pardon you. He will make you his personal servant again, and you will serve him his wine, just as you used to do. But when these good things happen, please don't forget to tell the king about me, so I can get out of this place. I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and here in Egypt I haven't done anything to deserve being thrown in jail." When the chief cook saw that Joseph had given a good meaning to the dream, he told Joseph, "I also had a dream. In it, I was carrying three bread baskets stacked on top of my head. The top basket was full of all kinds of baked things for the king, but birds were eating them." Joseph said, "This is the meaning of your dream. The 3 baskets are 3 days, and in 3 days the king will cut off your head. He will hang your body on a pole, and the birds will come and peck at it." 3 days later, while the king was celebrating his birthday with a dinner for his officials, he sent for his personal servant and the chief cook. He put the personal servant back in his old job, and he had the cook put to death. Everything happened just as Joseph had said it would, but the king's personal servant completely forgot about Joseph.
Once again, here today, gone tomorrow, and how fleeting everyone's memory is when it comes to doing good.
Exactly.
You will be happy to know that upon deeper search, an ROE
Yes.
is a type of deer, as in buck deer thing. And then the
Okay.
KINE word is a term for cattle. So when they were talking about rows and kine, it was basically deer and cattle.
And do you remember what the verse was that had that? Do you have the verse that was
Well,
in?
the good news is it's going to be in Genesis 41. Also, Pharaoh's dream was about kine, which is the deer again. So it's about Pharaoh's dreaming.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah, cattle and deer, and that's the terms that they use collectively. All right, my friends, thank you for joining us tonight on Doc and Queenie Bible Trivia, whether live with Debbie Miller or on the replay. We are thrilled to be able to bring you the word with a deep dive, Bible trivia style. And right now we are starting Genesis chapter 41. What was Pharaoh's first dream about? Kine, corn, stars, or wheat? What was Pharaoh's first dream about? Kine, corn, stars, or wheat?
Genesis 41, verse 2. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass.
What was Pharaoh's second dream about? Kine, corn, stars, wheat. What was Pharaoh's second dream about? Kine, corn, stars, wheat.
Genesis 41, verse 5. And he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk.
What did the magicians and wise men tell Pharaoh about his dreams? They meant 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. They meant 7 years of plenty and 12 years of famine. They meant 12 years of plenty and 12 years of famine, or they could not interpret them. What did the magicians and wise men tell Pharaoh about his dreams? They meant 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. They meant 7 years of plenty and 12 years of famine. They meant 12 years of plenty and 12 years of famine. They could not interpret them.
Genesis 41, verse 8. So in the morning his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh.
How did Pharaoh hear about Joseph? The butcher told him. The butler told him. The baker told him. The captain of the guard told him. How did Pharaoh hear about Joseph? The butcher told him. The butler told him. The baker told him. The captain of the guard told him.
All right, I will need which verse we're going to read from.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Please hold. Okay. Actually, it's 9 through 12.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm looking at this going, okay, it's really, sketchy on one verse. Genesis 41, verse 9 through 12. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today, when Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. We dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream.
What did Joseph answer when Pharaoh said he had heard that Joseph could interpret a dream? I will, if you make me a ruler. You must first give me gold. I can do as you said. It is not me, but God that can give you an answer. What did Joseph answer when Pharaoh said he had heard that Joseph could interpret a dream? I will, if you make me a ruler. You must first give me gold. I can do as you said. It is not me, but God that can give you an answer.
Genesis 41, verse 16. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer.
What did Joseph say the dreams showed him? 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. 7 years of plenty and 12 years of famine. 12 years of plenty and 12 years of famine, or he could not interpret them. What did Joseph say the dreams showed him? 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. 7 years of plenty and 12 years of famine. 12 years of plenty and 12 years of famine, or he could not interpret them.
Well, this kind of looks like another multiple answer. So I'm just going to read from Genesis 41, 25 through 31.
Got it?
Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears, blighted by the east wind, are also 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh, God has shown to Pharaoh and what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will rise 7 years of famine, and all that plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land.
What did Joseph instruct Pharaoh to do? Build an altar, prepare an army, store up food, buy food. What did Joseph instruct Pharaoh to do? Build an altar, prepare an army, store up food, buy food.
Oh, Genesis 41, verse 34 through 36. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through famine.
Who was made in charge of all the land under only Pharaoh? Herod, David, Joseph, Manasseh. Who was made in charge of all the land under only Pharaoh? Herod, David, Joseph, Manasseh.
And which verses do you want me to read in this one?
Yeah. It sounds like you've got choices after choices after choices. Let's see what would be the concise-est. Okay. 40, well, 39 and 40.
Okay. Genesis 41, 39 to 40. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I've set you over all the land of Egypt. Wow.
What was the name of Joseph's wife? Jane, Asenath, Manasseh, Ephraim. What was the name of Joseph's wife? Jane, Asenath, Manasseh, or Ephraim?
Genesis 41, verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephanath. Yes, and he gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On.
What were the names of Joseph's sons?
Yep.
Asenath and Potiphar, Manasseh and Asenath, Simon and Levi, Ephraim and Manasseh. What were the names of Joseph's sons? Asenath and Potiphar, Manasseh and Asenath, Simon and Levi, Ephraim and Manasseh.
Genesis 41, verses 51 and 52. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction.
And that is the end of chapter 41, Doc.
Shall I read this? We've got a couple of minutes.
That's up to you. You read an awful lot of each of those chapters earlier, but that's up to you. You can see what your version.
I think I'm going to skip because it's long.
Okay. No, I think that is actually because we read so much of the chapters just because of those answers, actually.
Yeah, it was quite full. So
that's amazing. Tonight,
I should say thank you, everyone.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say tonight we did chapters 38, 39, 40, and 41. So next week we can actually start with chapter 42.
Sounds good, Queenie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, whether live with Doc, Queenie, and Debbie Miller, or on replay, Doc, Queenie, and Debbie Miller.
Yeah.
You can always find us every Thursday night at 7 p.m. for Doc and Queenie Bible Trivia, or you can find us on Facebook Live on Mondays at
high noon.
And you will always see me do that to Queenie because I just think I laugh every time. I don't know why, but I just do.
Well,
but
guess what? Now that you were being so cute about that, guess what's happening tomorrow right around high noon on a Friday?
Is there a coffee club?
Nope.
Is there a guest live?
Ta-da! Ding, 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 ding. Good job, Doc.
Thank you, Queenie. There's a guest live. Awesome. You didn't give me the cue, and I totally forgot, even though I didn't look at my calendar yet. So, well, I'm sure it's going to be fun.
It is actually. I'm looking forward to it too.
So, everybody, stay tuned. We will be on between 12 and 12:30 ish.
Uh-huh.
We're super excited about our guest. She's a really neat lady. So stay tuned. But until then, have a blessed rest of your evening. And if you can't join us tomorrow, have a great, fantastic weekend, and we will catch you next week. Thank you, Queenie.
Thank you, Doc. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night, Debbie Miller.
Yeah.